Bukayo Saka! That is a goal! Wanyeri tries one!
Minutes at the Santiago Bernabeu is a long time, but you know what? It flew by for me because I had a great time. This is Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we are coming to you live after Arsenal's 2-1 win at the Bernabeu, which means that Arsenal progressed to the Champions League semifinals with an aggregate scoreline of 5-1 against Real Madrid. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to get into, individual player performances, and we might look ahead to PSG as well. And I'm just realizing now that my microphone is not plugged in, so sound quality might be a little off. So I'm going to plug that in a second. And we're just going to talk about just what an amazing night this was, what an achievement, and all that good stuff. So while I fix my microphone, I'm going to bring in Drew here, who you can follow on Twitter at GeeChyKid and on Blue Sky at supplyandmandrew.bsky.social. Drew, just give me a 1,000-foot view of how you're feeling right now.
Well, the first thing is I'm kind of sad John's not here for this, because John's far more animated than the both of us. So seeing his reaction to all this would have been nice. But how I'm feeling is, this is going to come off really, really cocky, and I probably don't even really care, but not surprised in a way. And what I mean by that is, I like we talked about in the last podcast, I wanted to face Real Madrid. I didn't want Atletico de Madrid. And we had discussed about the fact that not only are they disjointed at the back, but they're just disjointed as an institution right now on the pitch. Like it's not their greatest season. There's a lot of questions if they should have gotten Mbappe, all these kind of things. I think there was no better time to play them for us, despite all the concerns we've had this season. Despite the star power they do have, matchup wise, I thought this was the right one for us, and I'm just happy kind of proved correct. But despite that, I'm still kind of over the moon because only English team to ever beat Real Madrid twice at the Bernabeu. Only English team our only third appearance ever in the semifinals of the Champions League. Undefeated against Real Madrid since we've faced them in Europe.
Only team to do that, by the way.
Yes, correct. And there's all these little mini talking points that kind of highlight just like what a monumental achievement this is for us. Maybe not in the grand scheme of football, sure, but that's not my concern. When it comes to Arsenal Football Club, this is a monumental thing for us, given all the contextual points of this season, how things have gone, the injuries, us being off the pace in the Premier League, what are we going to do right center forward, we've got all these kids, all these things. When you put all those things together, the fact that we comfortably saw Real Madrid off over two legs, and to go to a place like the Bernabeu, and jokes aside, of dark magic in the basement, like whatever it is, those jokes aside, their fans and the club and the players had a right in their own way to be confident of reversing it at home, because we've seen them time and again have these almost like otherworldly performances in Europe, where when the chips were down for them and they've come back and they've put in absolutely like immense performances, not just at home but away as well. Holding champions currently, or not anymore, obviously, but they won't be coming in the season. But so contextually, with all those things involved, the talking points moving up to the match, the fact that we, I would say this might almost have been a better performance in the first leg, given all those things involved, given away from home. The fact that Mirko Moreno is still putting up the numbers he's putting up, the fact that we don't have a center forward still, Saka coming back and scoring, and then also missing a penalty, and giving Madrid so much momentum at home. And it could have been such a different story, but the biggest thing for me is it shows not just the progress that we've had under Arteta, but it shows the maturity that the team have had, and that the maturity of how it continues to grow under Arteta, because if we think back, if this happened last season, the season before, that under Wenger, if that missed penalty could have deflated everything and given Madrid that one goal. And if Madrid scored a goal, I think we would have been in trouble. If we went 1-0 down, would have been maybe a bit of a different story. I tweeted going into halftime 0-0. I think at that point it was a guaranteed. I thought it was close before, because how often have we given up 3 goals in a match under Arteta? It's rare. The last time was a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I think you said like 468 days or something like that.
Right. So all we had to do was not have a complete meltdown on the road, and then getting that one goal. Well, we're never giving up 4 goals to anybody. So I think once I got that first goal, that was kind of it. And yeah, I know I ranted a little bit, but I just think this is such I'm going to be I was unbearable on social media before for the first leg. It's going to be 50 times worse now. I feel bad for whoever follows me on Instagram, but overall, this has been it's huge. And briefly, before we get on to things later, I'll back up what I said. After the first leg, that I think we'll actually go on to win Champions League now. I think there's so much momentum that the players don't fear anything, and you can see it. To go with such confidence, which is a young group of players, to go with confidence to Madrid, reverse it, keep them quiet. And there's so many data points as well we can talk about later, but it's huge, and I couldn't be happier. So.
Yeah, I mean, once you've walked into the Bernabeu and did what we did today, I mean, that's kind of it, isn't it? That's the pinnacle of pressure in football. So I think this is going to be a turning point for the team, right? I think this team is going to start to realize that they can hang at the highest levels of the game, and they can dominate at the highest levels of the game. And I think I'm in the same boat as you. I think, barring any more significant injuries, and if we just play to this level consistently for the next 3 matches in the Champions League, then I do think this might be the year. And I'm just before we kind of get into risers and fallers and specific performances and all that, I'm just so proud, because I was just the build up to the match, right? You had this week-long Real Madrid psyop going on, where every 45 seconds, La Marca or Cope or some Real Madrid affiliate, or Chiringuito or some Real Madrid affiliated journalist would come out and say, the players think they can come back. The remontada is on. Ancelotti is wearing a wool coat on Wednesday because he believes that they can turn the score around. It just, they built up all this pressure to the point where when the match kicked off, I'm not going to say terrified, but I was really nervous, because they built up this legend of how good Real Madrid can be and how they can score these crazy magical goals out of thin air. And they still can do that, but they made it seem almost inevitable. And we walked in there and showed that it is very far from inevitable. So it was a really excellent performance. I think the players are really going to take a lot from this moving forward. And, we have PSG up next in the semifinals, and then after that's going to be one of Inter and Barcelona. And I was talking with my dad on the phone earlier, and he asked me, he was like, why are Arsenal playing so well in the Champions League and they haven't had the best season in the Premier League? I was like, well, because all these teams play us. 30 of 38 games in the Premier League, we have to break down a low block or a mid block, right? And we have to, there's 82 guys inside the opposition penalty area, and we have to turn a half volley worth 0.003 XG into a goal. And, there's just not that much space to operate, and we don't have the personnel to pick those locks right now, unfortunately. But in the Champions League, Real Madrid they think they're demigods. Of course, they're going to come out and play us, and they're going to leave all this space. Barcelona probably the same way. PSG same way. Although probably with a little less ego at this point in their cycle. So, I just think it's very smart and very savvy and very pride-inducing how we have used that to our advantage and how really come in here and done the job so far. So. Let's move on to the risers really quick. So you and I are going to do 2 each, just because I think there's that many good performances in the match. So floor is yours. Who is riser number 1? I think you're on mute.
I sure am. Probably Martinelli. I kind of feel like we've gotten sucked into a lot of conversation about it on the podcast. There's obviously a lot of social media discourse about what business we're doing in the summer. A lot of people feel like we're going to go for a left winger, and we still may do that. But Martinelli, in recent weeks, has shown, he might be capable of recreating that season. What was it 2 years ago when he was absolutely on fire in the final third?
Yeah.
It shows how important his work rate is to the press and to the way we play. It shows he's still a very big attacking threat. So I think for me, he's got to be one. And yet, not make no mistake about it, that second goal came later in the match, but it showed the type of goals that we need from him. Also, it shows the type of goals we are capable of scoring when we want to play direct. And we've talked about it before as well. It might be time to tweak the system just a little bit in Europe if we want to go on and try to win it. It shows we can play direct. We can utilize his pace out wide on the left. So for me, I think he's hitting up at the right time. And unfortunately, it didn't happen, for a myriad of reasons in the season in the Premier League. But in regards to Europe, him getting hot right now would go a really, really long way to counteract the fact that Havertz might be back for the final, but obviously he's not going to be. I think he's definitely one for me, I would say, for sure. So
yeah, I mean, he ran his socks off in both legs. He and Saka both, I think, were terrific in terms of tracking back and doing the defensive work. But just recently in general, I think Martinelli has really played with a lot more confidence and I think decisiveness on the wing as well. I think that's kind of the thing he was missing. It just felt like sometimes he'd get the ball and he would dribble into a bit of a roundabout and, get cornered by 2 defenders and then he wouldn't have anywhere to turn and he'd lose the ball. And he'd just go down these cul-de-sacs instead of, actually doing something with the ball. But, in the last, I'd say month or so, he has really looked to do one of 2 things when he's on the ball, either drive to the byline and cut and play a cutback, or cut inside and see if he can combine or, play across or, even a couple of times he's taken a shot from that half space. So he just looks more confident. I think, someone finally sat him down and reminded him what his talent is. That's probably Carlos Cuesta's doing, but anybody at the club really could have been responsible for that. My money is on Cuesta. Anyway, I think it was great. And just, that goal, I think that's a really nice, clean finish. Didn't overthink it. Didn't scuff his contact, ran in really nicely. I think that was Fran Garcia. I'm not overly familiar with the left back that Real Madrid subbed on. Who, by the way, looked like he kind of gave up on the play at the end. But, it was just a great goal, great run from him. And, overall, really, really impressed by that performance. My first riser is actually going to be the guy who played that pass to him, which is Mikel Merino. And, I've said at times, I've written at times that I somewhat regret the Merino signing, and I think it's time to retract that statement because because he came in as an 8 and I was looking at Desiree Doué and Xavi Simons and other 8s like that in that position who I thought could have been very useful to us this season. But, any player who has a goal and 2 assists over 2 legs against Real Madrid, that's a player worth having on your team. And especially tonight against Madrid, I just thought he was so well. First of all, he ran like crazy as well. He covered so much ground. He was dropping in defensively and kind of just chasing Madrid players all over the pitch. But also he was, working, I think, really well in tandem with Odegaard on the press. I think Odegaard kind of was the one who ventured forward and, actually pressed the keeper. But I think Moreno did really great in that regard as well. And in possession, he just really did a good job of being a focal point on offense and serving as kind of that target man for Raya to launch the ball toward. But also, he was really good as a false nine, just kind of dropping in, collecting the ball, turning, and, he played a couple sly passes, including the 1-2 Saka for the first goal, where he just had the ball on the edge of the area, saw Saka making that diagonal run in behind Madrid's defense, slipped him in to make a 1-0, and then, looked up on the counter at the end of the match, saw Martinelli kind of running in on goal, and, played a really nicely timed pass for Martinelli to go one-on-one with Courtois and make a 2-1, 5-1 on aggregate. So, yeah, just all in all, I think he had a great performance today, and I think he really is kind of hitting mid-season form. That's probably why we haven't seen, this kind of level of play from him for, first half of the season, just because he came in, got injured, and then he was working his way up back to match fitness and had won the Euros of Spain, which meant that he kind of missed preseason. So I think, now we're really getting him at 100%. And I'm really impressed with what he's showing at that level.
Yeah, no, I don't have much more to say, but I think it's a good point to mention the fact that because he played with Spain at the Euros, he had no preseason for us and getting injured. And I don't think a lot of, and this isn't to have a go at fans, but I do think sometimes people forget how long it takes to build your fitness under the best of circumstances, let alone after being fit from a tournament and then falling off a cliff due to injury and then having to start from scratch. And I think Doc, kind of alluded to it when we had him on as a guest, but it takes weeks, if not months. And the fact that when he was finally fit, he wasn't getting consistent minutes as well, which means it prolonged the length of which it took for him to get up to that point. Now that he's playing week in, week out as a center forward, I think you're right. We're seeing more of what we expected from him when we made the signing, or those of us that were happy about it probably expected. There's a few people I know who are very embedded in Spanish football, or at least know people who are. And I mentioned Tom Canton a lot. He's one of my close friends, and he had done a preview on the Moreno signing for his podcast in the summer, and he was thrilled about it. As a utility player, as someone who comes in and helps the system, kind of an under the radar signing, and that's proving to be correct. And it's hilarious to me because he's doing it as a center forward, a position which he's not ever played at the professional level, and he's outperforming. Currently, the center forwards we do have, and also center forwards he's playing against. He had a higher XG than Kylian Mbappe across 2 legs in the Champions League.
I mean, he's scoring more than some of the best center forwards in Europe right now.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we said before in the last podcast. It was the time before that, where it just shows you where this club can go under optimal circumstances when we finally do get a center forward in the summer, and kind of the expectations building around that now, which could maybe bite us in the leg depending on what we do in terms of business. But that's a whole other topic around the time. But yeah, it's hard to speak against how week in, week out he's also showing his worth, and it's also going to bring us that kind of quality and depth that we're going to want starting next season, because obviously he's not going to be starting at center forward next season. He's arguably not going to be starting in midfield, depending on who brings in Vivendi, obviously, but we can look in certain matches and hopefully have much more faith in terms of rotation when you can bring him in off in a cup match, or kind of a I wouldn't call it dead rubber, but if you need to rotate against whoever it is, whoever gets Leeds get promoted next season. If we have Champions League match midweek and means to rotate you out, you can start him and you're going to be happy with it, and that's kind of what you want. So yeah, I agree with you. I think he deserves to be a riser again because he's been a riser a few times for us on the podcast. And it's hard to kind of like stop singing his praises at the moment because he's been absolutely immense. And I also love the fact that he's taken so quickly to what it means to be an Arsenal player. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. He's fully bought in with the manager, with the players. He seamlessly transitioned from going from La Liga, coming into the club, and despite dealing with that injury, he looks like he's been there longer than less than the season. And I think that actually speaks to what we have going on behind the scenes as well, off the training pitch, also on the training pitch, during matches, just how all these players it feels like they've been there for much longer. That's really important. And it gives me confidence moving forward in the summer that I'd expect almost similar responses from players. It also shows why we're so picky about bringing players in, but almost guaranteeing that these players will really truly fit everything we need in terms of personality, character on off the pitch, how they meld together into the side. That is proving equally important right now as we push, for in Europe right now. So.
Yeah. And just one more point before you get on to your second riser. Kind of looking ahead to next season when we hopefully do bring in a striker and Havertz is back to full fitness. We'll still probably have Jesus, and we may or may not have Trossard on the books as well. But it's nice to know that if shit hits the fan again in terms of injuries, we've got one more guy who can play center forward at a very high level. And, that's just very reassuring.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. All right. Who you got for riser number 2?
It's not surprising, but probably Kivior. I feel like the fan base is so down on him for a while, rightly so. But to come in and perform to the level he's performed in, basically, like you're taking something out of the freezer, not even giving it time to defrost. You're throwing him right in, and he's done it so well. And obviously, Real Madrid has our own problems, but this is a player we're probably looking to shift in the summer, most likely. They've got all these links with, like Dean Huijsen and all that kind of stuff. But he's come in and he's performed so well against, arguably the best friends in Europe, bar Barcelona, on form or whatever, this season. And it just shows kind of like the level that we're looking for. Again, similar to Moreno, where you have players now you can trust. And it's a shame that maybe Kivior hasn't performed to this level previously. But I like the fact that, he's doing it now. And someone had tweeted, I forget who, but I retweeted on Twitter earlier, where no matter what happens, if he stays or if he goes in the summer, the fact that he's left such an important imprint on the club, despite knowing he might be leaving, again, speaks to who he is as a player. It does show that there was quality there, and for whatever reason, it didn't really come out as much as we wanted it to. That's okay. It's coming out at the time we need it to. Is like, I don't think there's words you can really place on that about what that means, and I think fans will ultimately remember that moving forward and be happy with it. And he's got to be a riser for me. I don't have much more to say because I think his play speaks for itself. But him doing what he's done for 2 legs, it's been incredible. So,
yeah, I think the funny thing about Marino and Kivior is that they're both players who remind you that context is very important in how you evaluate a player. And I was kind of in a similar boat with Kivior where I wasn't sure if he was good enough. When Gabriel got injured, I was very worried about what that back line was going to look like with Kivior in it. But then, he's kind of come out and shown us that if you just have a bit of a runway and get those few games in to just kind of warm up and get back into the rhythm of things and get used to, the left back and the right center back that you're playing between, then, you might have a better player than you expected in that position. And I think that's proven to be the case with Kivior. And obviously he's always had the physical traits, right? I mean, the guy is a bit of an athletic freak. Great top speed. I think kind of an issue with him has been his acceleration, but that's a really technical thing. Great top speed. If I remember correctly, he also registered a really impressive jumping height from a standstill position. The point is, he had really good athletic traits, and this was a guy who knew how to use his body at a high level. Was a great passer on the ball, very secure, especially with his long balls over the top. And he just had some really great qualities about him, but he'd get thrown in for a game or two, and he wouldn't be the second coming of Franz Beckenbauer, and we'd all get on his back for it, myself included. But, it's 2 games against Real Madrid now that he's looked great, outside of a couple moments early in the first match where he looked a little troubled by Mbappe, which is understandable. Mbappe troubles even the best defenders in the world. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really happy for him because I think he is a talented player, regardless of whether it works out for him at Arsenal or whether he has to go somewhere else. And I think he's really showing what the manager saw in him when we brought him in a couple years ago now. So yeah, I'm really impressed with how he did. He struck up a really nice partnership with Saliba as well, and I don't find myself shaking in fear at the prospect of him dealing with PSG's front line now. So yeah, well done to him. I think I had one idea for a riser, but I want to save that as maybe the next thing that we talk about after the risers and fallers. But I'm going to go with Declan Rice. And it's getting difficult to pick Declan Rice as a riser because the guy is he's one of our top 3 players at this point in time. Right. And I think he's one of the best midfielders in the world, if not the best based on current form. But I think he was magnificent again today because he walked into the Bernabeu with a really tall order, right? He's supposed to cover all this ground, right? He's a 2-way 8. So he's supposed to contribute in attack, and he's supposed to register shots on goal, try to create chances, and then coming back, he needs to defend against Jude Bellingham, Rodrigo, Kylian Mbappe, and Vinny Jr. to varying degrees, as well as guys like Valverde and Luka Modric came on at the end as well. And he has to help defend against these superstars without getting a yellow card. And I think that was a crazy order to ask from him, and he did it. Right? We're going to lose Partey for the first leg against PSG, rather unnecessarily, I might add. I don't want to, go too far into that, but I think that was a boneheaded move from him. But I think the 2 players I really didn't want to be without against PSG were Timber and Rice, and both of those guys made it through unscathed. So having Rice for PSG is going to be massive, and I just think he seized the moment again so spectacularly. And I thought he was great on the ball. I think his corner delivery was great as well. And I think all in all, he just showed a level of composure and leadership on the pitch in an absolute pressure cooker of a match that was just unmatched. And, he got into a few scraps with Jude Bellingham throughout the match. And I think he came out on the other side looking way better. And, yeah, all in all, I just think it was a great match. Really solidified our midfield, and yeah, man, I don't think 105 million was enough for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about anything that you mentioned regarding his performance, because I think that sums it up. I think what I would say is that when you spend $100 million on a player, these are the performances you're looking for in the big moments in Europe or in the league. And I think Rice is showing that. And I'm not saying he didn't show it previously, but this is when it matters the most overall. And it's funny because I know Real Madrid got him on a free, and they brought in Jude Bellingham and all this stuff, but those players weren't showing across two legs all the hype and as holders. And I think for Rice to go in there and show them up, and he's a guy that still doesn't get a lot of respect, whether if it's from on the continent or from Premier League fans in general. West Ham fans still have to go at him every now and then. Obviously, there's some bitterness there, which makes sense. But the fact that I would say he was both men of the match, for across both legs makes sense. That he was the best player across both legs from both teams, and the way that he constantly showed up in big moments, despite the pressure, not just the pressure at home, but especially the pressure away today, like you said. Yeah, I agree. I think it showed, again, kind of linking it back to the summer. This is when the club goes out and spends money. This is, I think, why they're so particular about any player they buy, but also when they spend big money, they try to come as close to a guarantee as when we're spending big money. This is what we're spending big money on and for. And the fact that Rice is kind of laying down that gauntlet now, I think is really important, not just for him, but for the team collectively and moving forward, and for the rest of the tournament, no matter how far we go. But I agree with you. I think he's definitely top 2 or top 3 players at the club. It's Saka, and then you have Rice, Saliba, Gabriel, and that that kind of quartet. I would think are probably the best 4. You could throw in Raya there, I suppose, but yeah, and he's going to have another big task ahead of him as well, because no Partey, who's been, again, I think he's been really good over the last 2 legs, and I'm not a big Partey guy, but he's played well. So replacing him is going to be interesting, because we might have to ask Rice to drop back and play 6 and drop Moreno back into midfield, and then you start Trossard at 9 or something like that, depending on what we do. Because I don't know if, as much as I would want to move Luis Skelly into midfield, I wouldn't throw Ben White into defense at the moment. I'd rather keep Luis Skelly at left back, because of the data shows he's been the best left back in Europe over the last however many couple months. I don't think you strip yourself of that, especially with the kind of attacking prowess that PSG have. I think you keep Luis Skelly at left back, you keep Timber at right back, and then you drop Moreno back to midfield. Then you have to ask Rice to play a different role now. But in doing that, I have complete confidence that he'll still perform. And that's one of the things that again, when you pay 100 million, can Chelsea fans really ask that of Enzo Fernandez? I'm not so sure. So I think he's been great.
So that means who do you play at 9 then? Trossard?
Yeah, I think you're gonna kind of have to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want a galaxy brain the first leg, because you could do something like move Martinelli there and start in one area. I wouldn't personally do that. I think you leave Nwaneri's energy off the bench for whatever reason you need. I think you just play Trossard at 9, ask him to play similar to how Moreno plays, have him drop deep, have him kind of link play, don't just kind of play off the shoulder, because you really can't.
Yeah.
And try to create space for Saka or Martinelli to kind of tuck into those left and half spaces and get into the box. That's what I would do personally. I think how we're playing at the back and in the midfield is too important. That's such a crux of why being able to go this far in the first place. I don't think you toy with that at the moment. So that's a whole other topic, obviously. But just going back to Rice real fast, I think he's just been so good. I just don't think people can ever question again if he was worth 100 million. I think these 2 legs showed precisely why he was, and why I think his valuation should be ahead of that comfortably at this point. So
yeah, and the whole Rice Caicedo debate, I think, is truly dead.
I don't think it was ever a debate, but that's besides the point. I mean, we're biased, of course, but I think proof's in the pudding. So
yeah. No, I mean, I like Caicedo, but I always thought Rice was the better player. It's just, people have opinions.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay, well, I think that's the risers. I'm going to start us off on the fallers, because I'm dying to talk about this.
Okay.
My faller is Real Madrid's right backs, Lucas Vasquez and Danny Carvajal. Let me start with Lucas Vasquez. Do you want to hear my Lucas Vasquez impression?
It's going to be similar to the one from last week.
Arsenal only came to the Bernabeu and defended. Okay, it wasn't fair. They didn't give us enough goals. And sure, they had 3 shots at the end of the first half, and we had 0, and they had more XG. But they came to defend, and it wasn't fair. And the refs. Yeah, I mean, it's so Rodri. It's and honestly, a lot of these Spanish players are, they're the same guy when they lose. To be quite honest, they all come out with this whole like, oh, they defended too much because they didn't just part like the sea for Moses when we tried to attack and yada yada. He was pretty bad against Martinelli. Didn't really effectuate much when he was on the pitch, and Ancelotti clearly tried to play him to get some sort of attacking benefit out of him. So yeah, bad game, whining after. That's too bad. Have a seat. But Danny Carvajal, I think, is kind of the bigger loser out of the two here, because did you see what he did at halftime? No, yeah. This guy accosts Saka as he's trying to go to the locker room for the halftime team talk, and just like grabs him and is trying to like talk to him and get in his face, and then grabs him by the back of the neck. And my question to Danny Carvajal is, who the fuck do you think you are to be grabbing the franchise by the back of the neck like that for no goddamn reason? Okay, you're not on the pitch. And it's one thing for you to start grabbing players on the pitch like you normally do. You're a pedestrian today. You are a spectator. You're on the sidelines. You are not supposed to be getting involved like that. And now you're trying to manhandle people and talk shit to. What were you even mad about? Like, were you that upset about the disrespect from the Panenka that Saka attempted? Like, get over yourself. So that's why. And also, we're talking about the same guy who, like, when he kicked Saka during the Euro finals, like, did the whole like cry more thing that United and Chelsea fans ran with for weeks afterwards. So a nice little added benefit, in addition to just watching Bukayo Saka after all these years of seeing him grow as a player, watching him score the dagger at the Bernabeu. It was really nice to also see Danny Carvajal just sitting there, looking like just an idiot after trying to do this whole tough guy act and yada yada. People rate Carvajal a lot. I personally don't. He's a decent player, but if you're a dickhead, that's points off for me, to be quite honest. So, props to Vasquez, props to Carvajal. You both were talking a lot of shit, and you both got embarrassed. Take the L. I know you won't, but yeah, those are two players I really never had much time for, and it's just nice to see them kind of, have the shoe on the other foot.
Yeah, I think it just shows, like, when you have players or clubs or institutions that are very embedded and steeped in their own hype, their own gravitas, like they feel like the rules don't apply. And for me, I know it won't happen, but I do think that should be suspension deserving for me. If you're not even on the bench owing to injury and you try to start some kind of scuffle at halftime with another player in the tunnel, there's got to be something. Like, you have to have some sort of suspension for me. I think that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm also not surprised, and I don't want to like wax lyrical or turn back time, but there are so many instances I can think of during my playing and coaching days where when you come up against other clubs, other players, other schools, where same thing, where when they don't know how to act when the chips aren't falling their way because they're so used to the chips falling their way. And you see this across other sports as well. It's just like the fact that we kept it classy. Like Saka obviously will defend himself and he'll get annoyed about it in the moment, but like he's not gonna like square up. He's not gonna do a Zidane and headbutt him or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it does show that maturity level that we keep talking about. Like, yeah, we're a younger-ish side, of course, but it just shows that where our head is always at, and it's always on focus. And I think that again speaks to Arteta deserves such immense credit for building a side that know how to carry themselves. And I remember all like the nonsense from rival supporters about like the little gimmicks that Arteta would do. But when you're trying to build mentality and character and like personal like wherewithal and know-how from scratch, basically when he had to come in, you're seeing now what's happened with that, like where that's gone. And it also shows how other players have never really, I can assume at least, have never really had that. And there's that famous video where you had Luis Enrique, when Mbappe was at PSG, he tried to sit him down and like had like a really like tough kind of like one-to-one about his responsibilities as a player. And it shows that those responsibilities never took. He was gone to Real Madrid. He exhibits the same exact problems. You've got questions like I said before when we started the podcast, questions about. I've definitely seen it at work when people were asking him should they have gotten Mbappe in the first place. He makes our press worse. His work rate's terrible. He's only there for the goals. He came because it's Real Madrid. And it just goes to show that even someone like, and obviously he's out the door, so maybe doesn't care, but someone who of the level of Ancelotti is struggling to handle the amount of poor personalities at a side who like just don't know how to act on things. Again, when things don't go their way, you'll see who these people are for real.
Yeah.
And there's probably a life lesson in there somewhere about when how someone acts when they're not getting their way, or when they want to be childish. When their backs are against it, that's who they actually are. So, obviously, like Real Madrid fans aren't going to care. Carvajal's not going to care. Whoever, it doesn't really matter. But for me, it's just a matter of us just brushing it off and moving forward. But it definitely sucks that you would see professionals comport themselves that way, and I'm just happy that we don't have players that act that way. For me, that's all I really care about.
It was shocking, and to your point about maturity on the pitch, right? There were. Jude was just shoving people left and right and getting tangled up with players. And I remember a moment where that happened with Rice, and you could see on Rice's face that he thought about it for a second. He thought about like having a go at him. And he's like, nope, I'm going to walk away because that's what they want. I think that happened with Timber as well. And that's why, when Partey got his yellow card for having a go at Rudiger, Rice pulls him aside for a hot second. It's like, what's the matter with you? Like you're not playing against PSG now. Like I hope that was worth it, So yeah, it's just I'm really proud of that. I am that is a really good point of just how like Arteta has gotten these guys to conduct themselves on the pitch and to remember that there is an ultimate goal that is more important than coming off as looking like the tougher guy in any sort of clash. So who you got for your riser? Or sorry, your faller.
There's a few. It's not going to be an Arsenal player. As much as I would like to say Mbappe, I think I've talked about it enough. For me, probably Bellingham. And it's tough for me because, like, for those that know me well enough or have followed me for a long time, I'm very like. Beyond head deep in Bundesliga, and they know that like Dortmund's the club that I follow quite closely. And seeing Bellingham at Dortmund, you saw the player he was going to become, pretty nailed on. And it's hilarious because Erling Haaland's kind of had a similar trajectory where a lot of times you have young players that refuse to stay humble when they reach the pinnacle of the sport or whatever. And you could probably argue that Erling Haaland's probably at the pinnacle of the sport. Bellingham is very close, if not already there. You're talking about players who will probably always be in and around the Ballon d'Or conversation. prominent for the national team. You know, Haaland's the face of Norwegian football, and Bellingham's one of the faces of English football. One of the most prominent players at Real Madrid. And the thing that I always get frustrated by, and I talk with my brother about this a lot. You know, he's a big basketball head, and he's got his own AAU program. So we talk a lot about sports and player development a lot of the time, just across the full plane. And character is such a big deal, like from a coaching standpoint, and also for me as a fan, I want players who have the right character. And when players show themselves to not have the right character, I lose a lot of respect for them. And obviously, it doesn't matter to them; they're not going to give a shit, and they don't know who I am. So it's not even about that. It's just about. I just feel like the way he has acted in the two legs. Again, same thing. When things aren't going your way and you're not, you know, hot shit anymore, and you're finally there's a difference between frustration because you're struggling and you're taking it personally in terms of like your own level of performance, and there's a difference between that and throwing your toys out and because you're spoiled. And for me, this is why, as much respect as I have for clubs like Real Madrid and Bayern and Barca, I feel like a lot of times those players forget to be humble, even in defeat. Being humble in defeat says a lot about who you are. And I think be frustrated. Yeah, I mean, I fucking hate losing on any conceivable level. As a player, as a coach, I fucking hate losing in Football Manager, for Christ's sake. Like, I can't, like, losing, no one likes to lose, right? Especially when you're a professional player. But it says a lot about who you are if you can differentiate between being upset about losing, but also saying, you know what, fair play, like we got done. Two legs, they were the better side. Be humble about it. And that's also why I lost a lot of respect for Erling Haaland as well, for how he's it's a side point, but the way he's bought into his own ego, the way his dad fuels his ego as well. That to me, it's such just like a turnoff from a sporting perspective, from a fan perspective. And I'm not an England fan, so I don't care about it, like, you know, to the national team level. But it's just, again, I one of my biggest concerns has always been, you know, now that Saka is, you know, you can't argue that he's world class, obviously. For me and for other people, and from some Spanish outlets have said that he's arguably the best right winger in world football. You know, bar Lamine Yamal probably would be the one you would maybe compare it to, obviously. I just hope he never gets to that level where that humbleness dissipates into something else. And I think you have to there's a measure of self-confidence and cockiness you do need to succeed as a professional athlete, but there's a balance there. And I think the best way you can maybe sum it up is say compare Messi with Ronaldo. There's no doubt in my mind that Messi is incredibly not confident, but he's definitely cocky, and you can see it. But he also doesn't. He's never really, that I can remember, had some of the same reactions that Ronaldo has, at least to the extent and how often, you could say. And you can look at them and say there's two very different players. One's very, very brash and open, and one's kind of more quiet and reserved. Doesn't mean he doesn't have cocky moments, but Messi definitely comes across as a little bit more humble. And yeah, for me, I just think, you know, yeah, it annoys shit at me. So that's kind of like one of those, like, I'm one of the things I'm so happy about is that we humbled this team and some of those personalities, because sometimes players do need that, clubs need it, fans need it. So yeah, that's probably it for me.
Yeah. I don't think I have much to add on that point, but yeah, I wasn't really impressed by the way Bellingham conducted himself today. Just thought, I just feel like he played kind of with this mentality of like, if I'm not getting my way, like, I'm gonna leave one on these Arsenal players,
right?
For like daring to think they're better than us or something like that. I didn't really like it all that much. What did you think of the refereeing in this game.
I'm where did I say it? I think one of the WhatsApp group chats where I said for the penalty that Saka missed, I had said in there that if that's in the Premier League, they probably wave that away. It's not given, maybe not even looked at. And I keep saying it where Champions League refereeing isn't perfect, but it's definitely closer to what you want than what we get in the Premier League. So I mean, again, big occasion, Real Madrid try to make it as uncomfortable as possible, not just for us, but for the refs. And sometimes, you can tell that refs do get influenced by the home support. They will get influenced by the home team. And I think I generally have no complaints about the ref across either leg. And particularly this season, how many times have we been able to actually say that in confidence? Maybe never, right? Apart from in Europe, I don't think there's been a moment in the European campaign this season where I've been pissed at the officiating.
Maybe the Inter match, but I think
maybe. But even if it's just the one example, how many times were we talking about refereeing or officiating in the opening 4 weeks of the Premier League season? More than once, right? So the fact that you can only point to maybe one instance across the entire European campaign where the refereeing was mildly annoying speaks a lot. So yeah, I have no complaints about it. I thought it was really good. I think the correct calls were made 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
So I just kind of hope that remains. So that's the competition. Level playing field. I'm kind of tired of having to talk about if this went one way or if this went another way, how things would have been different. No, it's just let teams play, and then at that point, it's just down to us. I don't want to have conversations about calls that should have went another one way or another, and if it affected us making a final or whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up is because I agree. I think the referee had a great performance, and generally maybe it was like a little whistle happy, but I think that's one of the best refereeing performances we've had this season, and that I couldn't help but watch it and be extremely annoyed at how things have gone down in the Premier League this season.
Mm-hmm.
Because here was a guy who, and the Bernabeu is like 100,000 seater stadium, right?
It's like 80, 85, maybe
85, okay.
90, yeah, something like that.
So this guy walks into an 85, 90,000 seat stadium that is amped up, that is dying to see their team win. That like they are booing anything that isn't their team, and it is loud and it is raucous, and the roof is closed, so it's even louder in there. It is a cauldron, and this referee did not care what the crowd thought.
Yep.
And he gave a penalty that we've watched happen for a foul that we watched happen 100 times in the Premier League, and we've all pointed at it and said, That's a foul in the box. Is that not like that? That should be a penalty. Never given in the Premier League. Sees it. Actually, he doesn't even see it. VAR sees it and then calls him to the monitor and says, "Have a look." And he has a look and he's like, "You're right. That's a penalty." Gives us a penalty. And then on the other end, Mbappe does his damnedest to earn a penalty for Real Madrid, right? And does this little act. Referee calls it a penalty, and then VAR, once again, even though, it's for 5 minutes, but VAR looks at it and runs back the whole play. They call him back to the screen. They say, "We think that's an offside." And he looks at it and he's like, You're right. That's an offside. And Madrid players tried over and over and over to win these calls. And the referee was getting booed. And Michael Oliver or Anthony Taylor or whoever would have pissed their pants 18 minutes into this game, and they would have done whatever the crowd wanted them to do, right? Yeah. And they would have made some ridiculous little call to hand the match to Madrid, and then we'd get called ill-disciplined and yada, yada, yada. And I was just it was so refreshing to watch a referee who didn't bow to that pressure, and to watch a VAR team that actually had the balls and were actually adults and competent enough at their jobs to call their mate over to the screen and say, hey, we think you got this one wrong, right? In England, it's just good process, boys. Even if it's the worst penalty call you've ever seen in your life, can't embarrass my buddy on national TV. Right. So, Saliba accidentally making head-to-head contact to Joao Pedro, yep, that's definitely a penalty. Lewis Skelly tripping a guy outside of their own penalty area, yep, definitely a red card. And that's it. End of story. But here in the Champions League, in the quarterfinal at the Bernabeu, when Real Madrid have to win, this referee is like, nope, I'm not giving you a penalty just because you want it. I'm not, and VAR is saying you have to come change your decision. And so, sorry if that's just a little bit of a rant, but just.
No, it's not a rant. And I think it's important. I mean, we've talked about this too. I would rather the system take 5 minutes to get the right call.
Yeah.
And that's when I highlighted the fact that I'm a big hockey guy, and you'll see, like, they'll call like the Toronto War Room or whatever, and they'll get on the phone, and they'll have like a 5-minute conversation sometimes while they're reviewing their footage to make sure that they're coming as close as possible to making the right call. I would rather that, and then I'd rather have, the extended stoppage time added on after the fact later. I'd rather the call be correct. I don't care about added time. If it takes 5 minutes, then we deal with 5 minutes of added time or whatever. I would rather the calls be more accurate, and then you just play out whatever has been allotted, and then because then you're not having to worry about it. It's just you're going to play 45 minutes anyway, right? So, yeah, I mean, no, I wouldn't call it a rant. I think most, if not all, fans would agree. Not just Arsenal fans, but how many Premier League fans are frustrated with officiating this season in particular, even going into last season. Certainly, the last 2 years, there's been so many conversations about, the standard, and we should be, the Premier League could be hiring refs from abroad because the standard is clearly better, and now you have semi-automatic offsides actually doing a really good job since it's been introduced. And just there's no reason to be this the lag between the Premier League and the rest of Europe is comical, and I think yet again it shows that when the process is not just done right but done well. I don't care if they stick to the process; you have to do the process correctly and well for it to matter. So the fact that they're doing that. Yeah, that's to me, that's all that matters.
Also, the process probably isn't whatever the referee calls, that's the call, and we're not going to change it.
Right, exactly.
So I just kind of wanted to have a quick conversation about that, just because it's just so good. It's so good. It feels like I've been eating at McDonald's for 7 months, and then someone took me to a Michelin star rated steakhouse downtown. And my mind is blown, and I just, So take notes, PGMOL. Fix up, hire that guy. That's what you should be doing. Stop hiring people from Manchester. Before we get out of here, I think we should probably just take a quick look ahead to not Ipswich, the PSG.
Yeah.
That's who we have up next in the Champions League. That's who we have to get past if we want to make the final. And they beat Villa. Well, it was like 5-4 on aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that match is really pertinent to talk about, right? Because on the one hand, PSG, they got it right. They finally got it right. They ditched Mbappe and Neymar and Messi and all that. And they went and started buying up really exciting young talent very smartly. And now they have a team that's, Vitinha and Desiree Doué and Nuno Mendes and Dembele. And I'm trying to remember that 19-year...
Barcola, the guy that you constantly love. Yeah.
Barcola.
Yeah.
Who else? There's that one like 19, 20-year-old midfielder that they signed from Portugal.
Something
Neves.
I don't remember. Is it Pedro Neves?
No, I think it was Pedro Neves. Anyway, it's not important. But that guy that they signed, I think, was playing for Benfica when they signed him. and it's just an excellent young core of players, right? So they have a bunch of talent. They're going to come at us all guns blazing. Dembele, I think on form, it's Lamine Yamal, and then Saka, and then Dembele. That is your top 3 right wingers in the world right now. They signed Kvaratskhelia since we played them last in the league phase, so they've upgraded there in attack. It's going to be very difficult. But
João Neves, by the way, I don't know why I forgot that. But there
João
you go.
Neves. Okay, I wanted to say João Neves, but I felt weird just being like Portuguese guy João.
Always trust your gut.
Yeah. but yeah, I am like, obviously, like, this is not a team to take lightly, but on the same kind of like in the same breath, these guys walked into Villa Park with a 3-1 lead, and we thought this game was pretty much done and dusted. And then they took a 2-goal lead at Villa Park to make it 5-1. And then they let Villa back into it in a very big way. And if it wasn't for the fact that Aston Villa's manager was Unai Emery, this might have gone to extra time. This might have gone to penalties. Villa might be playing us in the semis right now. And so I think what that shows me is that this team can be gotten at. And obviously that midfield is very technical. It's not very athletic. So I don't think, as long as we can deal with the quality that they have on the ball, that's not a midfield that can keep up with, Partey Rice Odegaard or Rice Marino Odegaard over the course of 2 legs, right? And it's not a defense that scares me particularly. So I think it is something that Saka and Martinelli and whether it's Trossard playing center forward and Marino's playing center forward can cope with. And Donnarumma is a player who can have his off games and can make his errors. So it's just one of those things where honestly I think this is the type of team that we're playing here on out. Madrid, PSG, Barcelona, these are all teams that want the ball, attack with pace, can pull magic moments out of thin air, but at the same time they will give you space, and they won't compete with you physically, and they won't run with you as much as you run. So I think kind of with that in mind, I like our chances. And you and I have both said about an hour ago that we think Arsenal are going to win the Champions League. And this is kind of why I think we'll progress, because I think we have the defensive quality to ultimately deal with them. But at the same time, I do think we have the transition capability and the ability to play in space that they'll allow us, that will give us opportunities to punish them. But just kind of, I wanted to get, before we get out of here, your 1,000-foot view of what this PSG matchup is going to look like for us.
Yeah. I mean, I again, I got something that's going to be weird to say, but I'd rather play PSG than Aston Villa, because similar to Real Madrid and Atletico, I'd rather play a team that we know can be open at the back. We know we can actually attack. We know we're not going to face a deep block. And to their credit, this is not the same PSG we beat in the group stage. They're a much better side. Thierry said it on commentary in the post match as well, on the American side of things. So the task is going to be very, very different. It's definitely going to be. I think it's going to be a much tougher two-leg affair than it was against Real Madrid. But that said, I do think we'll progress. I don't have like many more initial thoughts on it. I just kind of feel like PSG doesn't scare me nearly as much as either Barca or Inter, for different reasons.
Yeah.
Now I just said before that I feel like we can and will go on and win the competition. PSG definitely scare me less than Barca and Inter. And there's been quite a few times this season where they've not looked good at the back. They struggled against Dunkirk in the Coupe de la Ligue, even though they went through. You can get at them. They also have a lot of younger players too, so they're going to have step up in big moments as well. There's a lot of maybe similar questions that they're going to face that we're also going to face. So I do think it's definitely a more even match than maybe fans will give it credit. And I do think it's important to remember that this isn't the same side we played before. They are very, very dangerous. If we give them the ability to really hit us on the break. And again, same thing with Real Madrid. If you gave Real Madrid consistent chances to get at you quickly on the break, they probably would have gotten goals. PSG, same thing. Kvaratskhelia, he's been undershadowed by Dembele this season. Obviously, the rise of Desiree Doué, Barcola even, but he's capable of things that are greater than all of those players. I think for me, talent-wise, he's probably the best attacking player they actually have, even though he's still betting into the club. He's such a difference maker, so it's a huge task for whoever's at right back. I do think that we have to be even more switched on against them than Real Madrid. And it's funny because the one time we slipped against Real Madrid scored, the Saliba mistake. We have to make sure moments like that cannot happen against PSG. I do think we can win that midfield battle, but we have to be as clinical, if not more clinical, against PSG. Because if you really think about it, 5-1 aggregate against Real Madrid, 2 of those are free kicks of a nonsensically small XG.
Yeah.
The goals we scored today are what we're really capable of, and I do think chances like that will present themselves against PSG, but I don't think we can really bank on the Declan Rice worldie or brace of them. But I think we'll come away with it. I think it might require extra time, it might even require penalties, but I do think we'll see it over the line. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be more entertaining, certainly than Barca Inter, because those are two very contrasting styles, and we played in during the group stage as well. When they want to, they can be so frustrating to play against. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think again, it's a big night, but there's also pressure PSG as well because they need to go on and win Champions League for themselves too. So I think it's two teams who are looking at something that they've been missing out for a long time. So I like the storyline there as well. But yeah, I don't have many more thoughts apart from that. But I do think we'll get through it. But I mean, I was amazed with my seat today before Saka scored. I think across both legs against PSG, it's going to be much of the same for both legs. I think it's going to be very, very tight too. So yeah, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story where you gotta go to PSG with preferably like a 2-3 goal lead.
Yeah.
But definitely go there with a lead. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I think also maybe another thing kind of in our favor is, again, this is a very young and experienced team filled with players who haven't necessarily played at this level before, haven't progressed this far in the Champions League. So obviously, I say that as a fan of a team that just reached a semifinal for the first time since 2009. But I just think this team is I think Arsenal are a little bit more seasoned than PSG are at their current position in their cycle. So maybe that'll prove to be a benefit. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We've got about 13 days before we play that match. And yeah, I'm just so excited. And I'm proud, and I want to win the Champions League. But whatever happens from here on out, I've seen enough this season. Yeah. I've seen enough to come away this season knowing that this was a good team, and knowing that if they had been fully allowed to, they would have done something special in the Premier League as well. You got anything else before we get out of here?
No, I think it's a good way to start up and end it.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to celebrating, and I'm not going to sleep tonight, but
I have to work tomorrow, so
yeah. I'm going on a bachelor weekend tomorrow, so I'll have 2 reasons to drink. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Drew and I just soak in the moment and enjoy the fact that we slapped Real Madrid 5-1 aggregate in the Champions League. It's great having you guys here with us. We really appreciate it. We really love you guys taking the time out to listen to what we have to say. And we will be back with you probably Monday, Tuesday, something like that, to talk about the Ipswich game and look ahead a little bit, maybe discuss anything that happens in the next few days. So we'll chat with you then. That's Drew. You can follow him on Twitter at GeeChyKid and on Blue Sky at supplyandamandrew.bsky.social. I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale and on Blue Sky at shamsdale.bsky.social. You can follow the pod at NotThatGooner on Twitter and notthatgooner.bsky.social. You can follow us on Instagram at NotThatKindOfGooner. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NotThatKindOfGooner. If you got any questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions, you can email us. Email is in the show description and the episode description, so feel free to check that out. And shout out to the Hooligan Soccer Podcast Network that we have become a part of, and we're looking forward to what the future holds in that regard as well. So thank you for being here, and get back to celebrating. Like I said in the previous episode, enjoy it, and we will talk to you after hopefully we beat Ipswich and don't really embarrass ourselves after this really nice moment. So until then, take care and bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you!
To go! Santi Cazorla! Oh, Saka! That is a goal! Wanyeri